Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Commissioner, and today I have a question that I've been pondering, and I'd like your input on it. What you think? Maybe everybody thinks the same way that I do, in which case, great. But it's something I hadn't really thought about before this year, and that is, do postseason stats matter when evaluating a player's season? This kind of came up because I'm a Yankees fan, and Aaron Judge had an amazing season in the American League, just like Ohtani had an amazing season in the National League. And Judge, even before this playoffs, had a bad reputation in terms of being good in the playoffs. Right? He had not been good in the playoffs up to this point. And so I started to think about that, and I was considering whether that should matter when evaluating a player's season or not. And of course, he continued to do poorly through the playoffs this year. And I think in the moment, we all think that, of course, that should matter. In some ways, the poor playoff performance diminishes from the season. But then when I was thinking about it, I don't think there are too many players where that actually applies. Like, if we think about Babe Ruth or any of the great players from the past, if you were to ask me, in 1927, let's say, how a particular player did in the playoffs, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. It really doesn't matter, right? It doesn't detract from the seasons, which is what we usually use stats to look at. And so I think in 30 years, I don't know that a particular playoff performance is really going to matter that much in terms of their overall stats. Obviously, some key moments from a player do matter and do transcend that. But those are like key moments or key plays or whatever you may call it in the postseason, and not like their overall postseason performance. Kirk Gibson, for example, his home run in the World Series, his walk-off home run, was his only at-bat in the World Series. And prior to that, I think in his playoff performance up to that point, he had not done well at all. So, but we don't think about that. We only think about the home run. Same with Joe Carter, let's say. Joe Carter's home run. We think about that play, that moment, but if you were to ask, how did he do the rest of the playoffs? Probably not too many people can tell you. Obviously, we have playoff MVPs and World Series MVPs and that kind of thing for players that did exceptionally, not just in one at bat, but through the whole thing. Freddie Freeman this year was an absolute monster, right, in the postseason. But I think, when evaluating a player, how well a player did during the season, I don't think it matters that much, the postseason stats. Even though going into it, I was like, man, if Judge tanks in this postseason, does that diminish his regular season stats? And I don't think it does. I don't really think it does. Let me know your thoughts on that. What do you think about a player's postseason stats compared to the regular season stats? And should it weigh in when evaluating a player's season overall? Or can the season stats just stand on their own? Again, maybe I'm the only one that's even thinking about this and it's not really that big of a deal. But it just struck me the other day. As further proof, I'll say, in this year's playoffs, or we'll say World Series, you had the top two players, Judge and Ohtani. All eyes were on them. And the going theme was that Judge was not clutch. He was letting the team down, and so on and so forth. But he finished the World Series. We'll just focus on the World Series round. Hitting just .222 with one homer 3 RBI, an 836 OPS, right? But we never had that conversation happen with Ohtani, even though in Ohtani's case, he hit 105 in the World Series. I know some will say because of his shoulder, but regardless, he was 2 for 19, no home runs, no RBI, 1 caught stealing, no stolen bases. He didn't have a stolen base in the entire postseason. Did not have a stolen base. He had 2 caught stealings, no stolen bases. OPS 767. That's in the entire postseason. 385 OPS just in the World Series. But again, I don't think the story, looking back for people, is going to be that Ohtani tanked in the postseason, as it is with Judge, if that makes sense. If the situation had been reversed and the Yankees had won the World Series, I wonder if that would have been different. If that story would have been different. But I don't think I heard hardly anything about Ohtani, and maybe it's because the Dodgers were up to a 3-0 lead in 3 games, so it didn't matter. But I don't know. What do you guys think? What's the reason for that? Why is there a difference, even though Judge performed slightly better in the World Series than Ohtani? But that's not the narrative, right? That's not the narrative. So, again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Do postseason stats matter? And if so, why don't we look back and think of all of the historical seasons that have happened, Ted Williams or whoever? I couldn't tell you their postseason stats. I could tell their regular season stats, but I couldn't tell you their postseason stats. Right? Over time, I think the narrative kind of fades away. So I'm wondering, like 20 years from now, how we will look back at an Aaron Judge or an Ohtani legacy, and will their postseason stats diminish or enhance that? Obviously, they have many more years, probably, of postseasons in their career to go. But at this point, their postseason stats are both not good. And I'm wondering 30 years from now if that will really diminish from their... I say it wouldn't. I say it doesn't diminish from their seasons. Other than, again, in the year it's happening, obviously. Or maybe in a couple years, people will look back and say, Aaron Judge, if he would have done better, the Yankees would have won. Again, the dropped fly ball aside, talking about their hitting performance. I don't know. Interested to hear your thoughts down below. Just a short video today because I was curious about that. It was something that struck me and I thought I'd ask. So thank you so much for watching. Head over to baseballmaelstrom.com if you want to follow the projects that I have going on. One is a payoff pitch project with Hall of Fame teams and competing, and a non-Hall of Fame team in the same league competing with each other. The other project is going to be starting here in a few weeks, and that is Season Ticket Baseball, best of the 1990s. Did best of the 30s. Now I'm doing best of the 1990s. So be sure to follow that, follow the action. Consider subscribing if you want to stay tuned to those projects as well. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, have a great evening.